The forest held its breath. A single shaft of light pierced through the dense canopy, catching on the steel tip of a loaded crossbow. Hidden deep within the underbrush, silent and still, the weapon stirred. A finger tightened, a heartbeat passed. The bolt tore through the quiet. In the clearing ahead, a blur of motion. A boy, no older than 14, spun around on heels, cloak snapping behind him. His blade, a thick, iron-edged carving sword nearly as tall as his torso, swept up in a wide arc and rang against the bolt, sending it spiraling into the trees. Amador didn't wait. His feet were already moving. The forest erupted into motion. A dark figure, cloaked in worn brown, sprang from the shadows, moving with inhuman grace. Trees bent to let him pass, leaves scattered in the wake. Amador gave chase. The boy's form was sharp, relentless. His sword dragged behind him in a low guard as he weaved through the roots and limbs, his boots barely touching earth. He launched off low trunks, flipped through tight gaps in the branches, and deflected another bolt mid-spin, his sword a blur of polished silver. Still, the cloaked man was quick, too quick. They raced like shadows through the green, the air thick with tension. When the man suddenly dropped to the forest floor and slid down a steep embankment, gravel and dirt tearing away beneath him, Amador didn't hesitate. He leapt. A single flip, clean and effortless. He landed in the soft earth below, directly in the path of the fleeing man. The cloaked figure skidded to a halt. In a flash, he drew not one but two bolt casters, sleek black crossbows, one in each hand. Click, click. Bolts tore through the air. Amador charged. His blade moved faster than thought, knocking each shot away in a storm of steel. Arrows flew wild, into bark, into sky, into stone, but not one found its mark. Still he advanced. At striking distance, Amador swung hard. The man ducked low, rolled beneath the blow, and sprang to his feet behind him. Amador's momentum nearly carried him over the riverbank. Pebbles skipped down into the dark current below. He caught himself, pivoted, and launched a final strike, but stopped mid-swing. The hooded man now stood tall, bolt casters lowered. The shadows pulled back from his face. Chiseled jaw, dark, focused eyes, the mark of the light etched faintly across his gauntlet. Sir Robert Hunter. He gave the faintest nod. "Good work, apprentice." His voice calm, but his words carried weight. "But remember, there's more to it than just deflecting the bolts. You must be conscious of where you send them. If this were a crowded town square," he gestured toward the trees riddled with bolts, "I doubt any bystanders would still be alive." Amador lowered his sword, breathing hard but smiling. "Yes, master." Robert turned away, walking back toward the embankment. "Again," he said over his shoulder. "Form, timing, intention. Let's see it done right." But before they could reset, a distant rumble of hoofs brought their eyes uphill. A rider appeared, dust-covered and urgent, bearing the crest of the order. An initiate dismounted, breathless. "Sir Robert, you've been summoned. The council awaits." The council chamber of the order stood like a cathedral carved into the bones of a mountain, arched, solemn, lit by columns of cold light that filtered from vents far above. 6 thrones formed a half-circle of authority. Upon them sat 6 master knights, each sworn, tested, and confirmed by the high priestess. Knight Robert stood at the center of the chamber, hands folded behind his back. A step behind him stood Amador, still marked by the sweat and dust of morning training, his eyes darting between the grim faces before him. One of the masters leaned forward. His voice was steady, worn by time and command. "The Pale Sun smugglers at High Tree Cliffs have gone silent." A second added, "No runners, no signal stones, no dead drops. They were last seen departing through High Tree Glade, escorting a child touched by the light. That was 12 days ago." Amador leaned in. Smugglers, master? Robert spoke quietly. Not all who serve the order wear our colors, Amador. The pale sun smuggles those gifted by radiance out of danger, children like yourself, before the darkness finds them first. Another counselor, one with a scar running from brow to cheekbone, spoke more sharply. The Morgana cult is active near those cliffs. We fear the route has been compromised. Robert gave a slight nod. And you want it confirmed? Confirmed, cleared, or silenced, whatever is necessary. If the child lives, bring them here. If they've been turned, a pause. You know what must be done. Amador shifted slightly at that. And us? Robert asked. You will depart from Cedar Copse by nightfall. The fewer the eyes, the better. There was a moment of silence before one of the elder knights narrowed his eyes, glancing briefly at Amador. You intend to bring the boy? Robert said nothing for a beat, then answered simply, Yes. He is untested. He is capable, Robert promptly replied. Another counselor's voice, lower and colder, followed. His eyes lingered too long on Amador. This mission bears echoes, Night Hunter. Painful ones. Amador looked sharply toward the speaker, confused. What do you mean? A few of the masters exchanged glances. The boy's guardians died protecting him, said one. And your mission leads to the same cliffs. The light has strange patterns when it repeats itself. Amador's gaze turned to Robert. You knew them? Robert didn't flinch. No. But it doesn't matter, Robert cut in calmly, his voice unshaken. He is a ward of the light, and the light chose me to train him. There will be no issue. The silence that followed was heavy, but eventually, one by one, the masters nodded. Then the mission stands, said the scarred knight. You leave at dusk. Travel unseen. May the light guide you. Robert bowed. We will not fail, Council. The sea stretched endlessly, black and reflective under a pale sky. Robert stood alone at the edge of the skiff, one hand gripping the railing, the other brushing the hilt of his sword. The waves lapped against the hull with a slow, rhythmic pulse, the kind that gave thoughts too much room to breathe. Behind him sat Amador, silently watching the horizon. Robert didn't speak. He barely moved. 14 years ago, a child had slipped through death's fingers. The same child that now stood at his side, sword in hand, light in heart. A miracle. A burden. He had already failed once before. Logan had been strong, talented, but undisciplined. He had asked many questions, too many perhaps. In the end, he'd turn away from the light. He had walked into the wilds without looking back. Now, Robert stood on the edge of that same path, and Amador walked it beside him. Elsewhere, a circle of blood burned beneath twisted oaks that lined a clearing in a dark wood. A lone figure knelt in the center, shrouded in crimson cloth and iron rings. His arm, bound in a tight spiral of nails and leather, trembled as he pulled the device free. Blood streamed down his forearm, hissing into a rusted bowl etched with ancient glyphs. He whispered through clenched teeth, pain sharpening every syllable. I offer pain for clarity, flesh for purpose. Let your voice find me, Morgana. The blood bubbled. Smoke rose thick and black, swirling into a shape that was not human, not whole. A voice echoed from within it. He walks the path again. The child lives. The light guards him. But the wound you left can be undone. The knight's head tilted upward, eyes glinting like burning coal. They cross the sea. You will meet them and lay ruin. There, your failure is yours to kill. The smoke coiled, twisted, and vanished. The knight stood slowly. His armor was jagged and dark, layered in obsidian scales that moved like bone. At his back, a longsword with a blue crystal blade shimmered in the moonlight. He whispered, almost reverently, "And darkness shall have its day." Robert had managed to avoid meaningful conversation the entire voyage. He kept himself busy, checking the sails, fussing over gear that didn't need fussing. When Amador asked about the order, or the council, or what happened to his parents, Robert gave half answers, cloaked in mission talk. "Not now. Later. Stay sharp." Amador saw through it. But he didn't push. Not yet. Now, as the boat drifted into the shallows, Robert stood at the bow, cloak whipping behind him in the sea wind. Smoke curled into the sky ahead, rising in thin black columns above the cliffs. He saw it first. He broke into a run, boots splashing through the edge of the tide. Amador followed without a word. As they crested the ridge overlooking Hilltree Cliffs, the ruin came into full view. Houses scorched and half collapsed. A wagon tipped and burning slowly, crows already circling the rooftops. Amador gagged at the stench of blood and ash. "They were just here," Robert muttered. He crouched beside a fallen man, a pitchfork still clutched in his hand. His chest caved in. Then, from deeper in the village, a faint thud, a groan. Robert was moving before Amador could ask. They found the sound near a lopsided home, its door cracked open. Ariella leaned against the frame, half-seated, her hand pressed tightly against her abdomen. Blood pooled beneath her. "Ariella!" Robert knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, her expression softened at the sound of his voice. "Old friend," she whispered, a weak smile flickering at the corner of her mouth. "You still take your time." Robert took her hand gently. "We came as fast as we could." Amador approached slowly, his blade still drawn, unsure. She looked up at him, her fingers trembling as she reached out and touched his face. "You've grown." Amador furrowed his brow. "You know me?" Before she could answer, clank. The sound of armor boots crushing through wet gravel echoed in the clearing. Robert rose, already drawing his crossbows. From behind the house, through the swirling smoke and rain, the dark knight stepped into full view. His armor glistened obsidian blue, crusted with dried blood and arcane symbols. His blue crystal blade, etched with the glowing ruins, shimmered with pale, cruel light. He stopped just short of the porch and tilted his head. "How touching," he said. Robert raised a weapon. "You did this." The knight ignored him, his eyes locked on Amador. "Your parents died for nothing." Amador's voice was sharp, cutting through the rain. "You killed my parents?" The knight's mouth curled beneath his helm. Robert stepped forward, tone steady. "Amador, we do this together. Keep calm, keep centered." But the boy was already moving. He lunged with fury, his carving blade slicing through the mist toward the knight's chest. The dark knight moved like a shadow, parrying twice with his armored gauntlet, then twisting and bringing the hilt of his sword down across Amador's shoulder. The boy tumbled aside, rolling into the mud. Robert opened fire. A flash of white radiant energy from both bolt casters lit up the night sky. The knight ducked and weaved, deflecting the bolts with the flat of his blade. Robert charged in, discarding the crossbows and drawing a short sword. Steel clashed violently in the center of the village. Amador rose, blood in his mouth and fire in his eyes. For a moment, they pushed him back. The two moved in practice rhythm, Robert striking high, Amador sweeping low, their movements like mirrored flames. Sparks erupted as the knight blocked, twisted, countered, absorbing everything with a bone-crushing poise. Then the stranger stepped back and slammed his fist into the earth. A wave of black force exploded outward, a ripple of shadow and sound that sent Robert flying with a grunt of pain. Amador stood his ground, deflecting the debris with his blade, staggering only so slightly. The Dark Knight came at him. Amador ducked the first blow, parried the second, and struck low, slicing across the knight's thigh. The dark metal sparked, but held. They circled. The boy's blade met the knight's again. Once, twice, then with a flick of the wrist, the knight had disarmed him. A gauntleted blow across the chest sent Amador sprawling. He fell, clutching his ribs. The knight now loomed over him. And so, the thread is cut. He raised his sword, then froze. The blade shook mid-air. His limbs locked. His breath caught. He looked down just enough to see the cold tip of a dagger protruding through the space between his shoulder and neck. He dropped to his knees, stunned. Behind him stood Ariella, barely upright, her face pale, her hands soaked in blood, her lips trembling. "You forgot. I wasn't finished," she rasped. The Dark Knight collapsed forward, armor hitting the stone like thunder. Ariella fell with him, but Amador caught her just before she hit the ground. He held her gently. Her breath was light, barely there. "Your parents would be proud," she whispered to him. "You carry them in every step." Robert knelt beside them, silent. She reached out weakly and touched Robert's arm. "The pale sun has not burned out, but they'll need your help, both of you." She tilted her head back and looked up. The storm was breaking. She could feel it in the air, the pressure lifting, the wind softening. Overhead, the clouds split just enough for a single ray of light to fall through. A rush of memory overcame her. Her father's laugh, the warmth of home, Parker's crooked smile, and the boy, silent in her arms. Her eyes sparked as the moon fought through the abyss to reflect within them. "The light will guide me," she thought, and she knew that it was true.